The King's New Clothes, an ancient myth. Once, and only once, many years ago, so long ago, even the passage of time had not yet begun. There was a king who was so fond of new clothes that he spent everything he had on them. He had a different costume for every hour in the day, every day in the week, and every week in the year. Nothing mattered to him except his clothes. Yet he was not satisfied with all the splendor of his wardrobe. Whenever his tailor came to him, he continually asked for something new. Eventually, the tailor was driven to desperation. He could think of nothing new. And to make matters worse, he was the only tailor in the whole kingdom. So he thought, and he thought, and eventually hatched a plan. A really diabolical idea. He told the king that he had invented a new fabric, which not only changed colors and shape into a new costume every moment, but that it would reveal those who were dim-witted, ignorant, or stupid, or all three, by a wonderful property. To a fool, the fabric would appear invisible. And to the wise, it would appear ever-changing and stunningly beautiful. What terrific clothes! The king thought to himself. Of course, to himself. Always to himself. Just by wearing them, I will be able to distinguish the wise from the fools. The tailor was commissioned to fashion the new clothes at once. Weeks went by, and still the clothes did not arrive. And no wonder, because there was nothing to send. The tailor never intended to make anything, because he had run out of ideas, and, through cunning, intended to deliver nothing whatever to the king. After a suitable period of time had elapsed, to convince the king that the clothes were incredibly difficult to manufacture. Finally, the new suit of clothes was delivered to the king, and he excitedly opened the package, only to discover that he could see nothing at all. But, not wishing to appear dim-witted, ignorant, or stupid, or all three, he pretended to dress himself in the new clothes, and went out among the people in his kingdom. And do you think for a moment that any of his subjects risked their heads by mentioning anything about his nudity? Not on your life, they didn't. Until a small child happened to say a little too loudly as the king passed by in procession, "Hey, look! The king is naked!" A stunned silence passed through the crowd assembled there to witness the procession of the king and his ministers, as the reverberations of the child's voice rippled across the square. "Now look at what you've done," the king wailed to the tailor. "Everyone thinks I'm a fool, going around naked." "Nonsense, Your Majesty," the tailor temporized. "Didn't they all see your ever-changing rainbow suit when you first emerged from the palace? It's just the children who are unable to see it." "Of course! They are ignorant. How could they know?" "I'll tell you what," he offered to the king. "I'll teach all the children to see your new clothes. And, until they do, just ignore what they say about them." The king thought this was a splendid plan, and the tailor was given the new job of teaching all his children, that is to say, all the children, to see his new clothes. This went on for some time, but there was a flaw in the plan. In order to teach the children to see invisible, actually non-existent, clothes, and even to believe it in spite of their senses, very strong methods had to be employed. These methods of hypnosis were so powerful that, as the children became immersed in the hallucination of the king's clothes, their vision of the real world dimmed. And by the time they reached adulthood, although they could now see the king's new clothes, they were unable to see the king himself. When the king complained to the tailor about this, the tailor replied, "Well, what do you want more? Do you want them to be able to see you or your new clothes? You can't have both, you know." The king was very aware that the necessities of conditioning were such that vision was extremely altered from the real to the hallucinatory. He did not have to be reminded that it was impossible to have subjects able to see both himself and his new clothes. Of course, he could have returned to wearing his old clothes, but compared to an ever-changing, infinitely varied, rainbow-colored costume, even if it did happen to be non-existent, they didn't seem at all adequate. "How does this sound?" the tailor inquired. "I'll teach all the children to see the clothes, but I'll teach a few of your subjects, not the wise majority of the population, because they are needed to support the kingdom, but the fools, those who are useless to the general purposes of life in any case, to see you. Of course, you must realize that when they learn to see you and not your clothes, you'll appear to them to be naked," he added in a slightly apologetic tone. "It's worth it," the king agreed. And so some of the fools of the kingdom, outsiders, misfits, and those who, through some misfortune or of nature, were not content with hallucination, were taught to see the king. And from that day to the present, the tailor has not been too awfully busy. And as for new ideas, for new costumes for the king, who needs aggravation? And that was the prologue to the wonderful book, The Lazy Man's Guide to Death and Dying, by E. J. Gold. Available from gateways.com, Gateways Books and Tapes, or from Amazon.com.